So I'm going to be doing a presentation on Healing Magic. We're going to cover various aspects of it, not just physical healing, but also emotional, mental, all sorts of aspects of it, working with various tools and items. And I will try to allot for my late start with my time and my pacing. So if you guys do have questions, you'll have plenty of time to be able to do that after we're done. So basically, when you're talking about the energy field and our aura, there are like various layers, but I'm going to be focusing on the three that go out from the body that are closest to the body, starting with the physical layer, and then the emotional layer and the mental layer. So a lot of times when people even talk about healing and illness in the body, they refer to the body being in dis-ease, which is like the root for disease. And the concept is if you haven't dealt with something in your mental layer, like if you haven't like mentally thought through an issue or a problem, then eventually it'll go into your emotional layer where you start having emotions and feelings about it. And when you break down the word emotion, it could be energy in motion. So when we get hyper emotional about things, it can make things start to speed up and manifest. And if we haven't dealt with this on an emotional level, then it actually will manifest into a physical ailment in the physical level of an area of your aura. So the idea is usually to kind of deal with it in the outer layers so that it doesn't manifest into your physical layer. Medicine has been going on for a long time in healing. There's various like gods and goddesses of healing. Like if you look at the Greeks, you've got, Asclepius, whose symbol is the rod with the serpent entwined around it, which is still used today in the medical profession. Even when you look at pharmacies and you see the R with the X on it, you can actually trace that back to even the Eye of Ra or the Eye of Horus as being the root for that symbol for pharmacies. I had a history teacher tell me the whole progression, and I wish I remembered it all. I just remember that it did stem from that. Then you also have like Hygiena, who is her name is the root for hygiene, and she's preventative medicine. You even have Airmead, who is from the Celtic pantheon, who was known as a great herbalist and great healer. And one of her stories is having her cloak where she actually laid all of the herbs out by their properties, and her father, who was jealous that she was a better healer than he was, grabbed the cloak and scattered it, scattering the knowledge. And so we go to her to learn about the medicinal properties of herbs. I will touch here on saying when I do talk about herbs, I'm really only going to be talking about them in a magical sense, not in an herbal medicinal sense, because I am not qualified to talk about that. I am not an herbal medicine healer by any stretch of the imagination. I just work with them in a magical sense. So we won't be talking about that. You can actually look up things as far as doing like your own herbal medicinal tinctures on various, there's various websites and information out there for all of that. One thing that I will touch up on is they usually would tell you to use alcohol when making your tinctures, and they usually tend to have a shelf life of about 5 years. You can also substitute that with, I think, apple cider vinegar, which actually kind of gives it a 2-year shelf life. Or for children, you can actually take vegetable glycerin and combine that with water. They will have a 1-year shelf life. It has a shorter shelf life, but this kind of makes it sweeter and easier for children. Or if you know someone who has like alcohol addiction, they don't want to be making their herbal medicines using alcohol. So the vegetable glycerin water combination is a good substitute for that. So going into a little bit of history, like back in the Middle Ages when they had the doctrine of the 4 humors, you can actually even look at this and even see that there were elemental correspondences to the 4 humors. Like yellow bile was fire, black bile earth, and then you had phlegm for water, and blood was air. Now, obviously this isn't conducive to modern day medicine, but it was interesting to see the elemental correspondences that they did have for these various substances. And where they came up with the concept of the 4 humors was when blood would actually sit in a jar or a vial and it would separate, it would form 4 different layers, and this is where the idea of the humors came in. And it's interesting that in medieval medicine, really they were more into the preventative aspect of it, because they didn't view disease as something that attacked you. They actually viewed it as something you suffered from because you didn't have enough health, and they would try to bring the body back into balance to bring you into better health. And of course they did things like, you know, bloodletting and things of that nature. But it is interesting kind of seeing the elemental correspondences. And if you actually wanted to integrate the elements into your healing, you know, you can even take that concept, because like if you look at somebody who was ruled by the blood, they were said to be sanguine, and they tended to be like courageous, playful, and carefree. So if somebody's feeling a little despondent, lethargic, you might want to tap into the humor of blood on an energetic level and maybe do some air medicine or air magic to help them with that. You know, fire was the choleric, and they were ambitious and restless. They tend to be easily angered, but they also had good leadership qualities. So if that's a characteristic you're trying to bring out, you could tap into that as well. And with the black bile being melancholic, these were more of the quiet, analytical, serious. So if people are hyperactive and you needed to kind of calm them down, you know, tapping into the energy of that humor can kind of bring them into balance. And then water was phlegmatic, and these were the calm, thoughtful, and patient and peaceful. So that's just a little bit on medieval medicine, but you know, just to see how the 4 elements and the humors all integrated into that. So I think probably a lot of times, I think when people want to do healing magic on people, it's a question that I get asked a lot, like, is it, if I want to do a healing spell for somebody who's in the hospital, is it okay to do that? Because there are people that believe, you know, ask permission before you do a spell on somebody. What I actually recommend in the case of healing is, if there's somebody that you want to send healing energy to and you can't ask them directly, or you can't get a hold of them, or for some reason, I will do a healing spell for the person, but I will state in my intention that this is if their higher self wishes to utilize this energy, and I will send it to them. And it's kind of like I'm almost sending like this ball of healing energy there, and if their higher self wants to tap into it, they can. If they do not, then it's there, and I'm not infringing on anything that they might be doing for their own personal growth or anything along those lines. So when it comes to color correspondences, in England, traditionally, the color for healing, excuse me here, is green. So they tend to use green candles for healing. It's the element of earth, stability, bringing things into balance. Here in America, we tend to view green a lot of times for money and abundance, which here again correlates with the element of earth. But we also use blue for healing, and this is a good healing color as well. It correlates with water, it's soothing, it's calming, and we're trying to soothe people back into good health. In recent times, because a lot of people are studying modalities that, like Reiki, where you're trained to visualize the energy as violet. So a lot of people are using violet now for a lot of healing spells and healing magics, which does work. It's fine. I typically use this for hex breaking, but you know, it is a color that's being used now. My suggestion is if you're going to work with a certain color for healing, stay consistent with it. Pick a system and stay within that system. For myself personally, I use blue and green for my healing spells when I'm doing candle magic spells. What I do is if somebody is ill and I'm trying to help them recover, heal from something, I'll use blue. But if somebody's had like a surgery and is going through some form of recovery after their surgery, I tend to use green. I didn't really read that in any book anywhere. That's just from the Book of Chris. That's what I've always done, and I've stayed consistent with that. But all 3 of these are very functional and capable colors for general healing magic. And here again, if you're dealing with something that's more of a mental thing, you might want to tap into air's elements. So you might use a yellow candle because you're focusing more on everything that deals with the domain of air, or somebody's having issues expressing themselves. Some people, when they're doing healing work and burning candles, they might want to work within the chakra system and use the 7 different colors for the chakra and whatever it correlates to. that's a perfectly acceptable system to work in as well. Um, I tend to stick with the elements, and the thing is you can also kind of combine the elements too. In whatever you're going to be healing somebody with. Like if somebody's dealing with, is having an issue expressing their emotions, you might want to burn a yellow candle for air, for communication, along with a blue candle for water and the emotions. Whereas somebody who works within the chakra system might go ahead and just use a green candle because that's the color for the heart chakra. But I would just say when you're doing this, stay consistent with what you are working in. Let's see. I remember there was a spell that I did once for my first sponsor. His fiancée, she wasn't feeling well. So I actually took a green candle and I took a eucalyptus oil, since that's really good for healing. And I actually dressed the candle with eucalyptus oil and I set it in a holder and put a ring of eucalyptus leaves around the candle, and I channeled healing energy into it, charged the candle and lit it, walked away and left it alone. And I'm sitting in the living room watching TV, and all of a sudden I hear this explosion and this pop go on in the other room, and I was like, God, what is that? And I walk in there to find that the candle burned all the way down and the holder I had it in got split into two perfect halves, releasing that energy. So I was like, oh, okay, well, that was effective. It was the first time I ever had a candle holder actually break and explode on me. Let's see. So working with herbs, you can tap into, their healing properties as well. Yarrow in the Middle Ages was used a lot for various healing things, like poultices and wound balms were made. These are also really good to, if you integrate it into a bridal bouquet, it said to put fidelity in the marriage for 7 years, which I guess is where the 7-year itch came from. Lemon balm, one of the things I will say, if you have pure lemon balm oil, if you're ever suffering from a fever blister or a cold sore, that is excellent to use because it is antiviral specifically for the cold sore and the herpes virus. And usually when I get a cold sore, I use lemon balm oil, and it's worked better than any over-the-counter thing I've ever used in my life. Willow is good for healing spells. Willow is actually the basis of where we get aspirin, and it actually, correlating with water, has a really nice soothing energy to it. So it helps to ease and soothe the person as they're going through their healing process. And also burning cinnamon in an incense is really good when you're doing healing works and healing spells. Now, when you're doing candles, you can charge a candle to do a healing spell and just light it and let it burn down and release the energy. Another thing that you can do is you can also program it and charge it with the intention of something that you light as you're doing healing work. I've actually done that also, where I'm doing healing work on clients, and I will actually have a candle that I light and I have it burning just while I'm doing the session, and then I put it out and I save it to light again at another time when I'm actually doing another healing session. So you can kind of have fluctuation with it. And what I've actually done, like I've actually had candles that I've charged for a healing intention, I've lit it, and then I've taken the flame from one and transferred it to another candle, so that when this one is starting to run low, I have another one already ready that I can substitute it with, and then I'll still transfer the energy from flame to flame onto the next candle as I'm going along. So let's see. Crystal-wise, if you look at carnelian, carnelian is a good stone of joy and creativity. Also from ancient traditions, it actually represented the blood of the goddess. And so in ancient in Egypt, they actually had the knot of Isis, which basically looks like an ankh with droopy arms, for those that have never seen it before. And they would actually carve this out of carnelian, and it represented the uterus and fallopian tubes, and was actually used as a talisman to ward off illness. So carnelian is good for healing work. You can actually tap into, that mother goddess blood energy to tap in to help to ward off illness, sicknesses. If you actually know someone who is suffering from addictions, you can use stones like amethyst or even bloodstone. Bloodstone is good for anything dealing with the circulatory system and your bloodstream. Amethyst was once actually believed to nullify poisons. And so you actually had kings trying to get chalices made out of amethyst, or at least with a ring of amethyst, to try to save themselves from being poisoned. Now, interestingly enough, we've actually learned that it is one of those stones that you can drop into water to help with impurities in the water, much like shungite. So those two together, when you drop into your water, it'll get the crap out of your tap, basically. So I will say, when it comes to actually making gem elixirs, where you actually will store them, where you can actually add them to water, some stones you can put directly in water, like usually any stone from the quartz family is okay, but always exercise caution. If you're going to do a gem elixir, I don't always recommend dropping the stone directly into the water. Like if it's amethyst, citrine, clear quartz, rose quartz, those are okay. But if you use a stone like malachite, which actually is very good for physical healing, malachite actually has metals in it that will actually toxify the water and actually make it poisonous. So you don't want to actually put a malachite directly into water. So since water is a feminine element and it has a receptive energy, set your water down and have the stone next to the water and have the energy transfer into the water that way. That way you're getting the energy of the stone and you're not unintentionally poisoning yourself or damaging a crystal like I did once upon a time with these angel lights. It became very porous because I didn't realize that it was too soft to put into water, and they actually started to break down. General rule of thumb, if the name of the stone ends in the letters ITE, like kyanite, selenite, malachite, don't put it directly into your water because it'll either toxify the water or the stone is so soft it'll break down and start to break apart in the water, in case like kyanite and selenite will. If you're wanting to do like an herbal talisman, like a mojo bag, you can take your bag, and one of two ways: you can either have your herbs in front of you, mixed all together for whatever purpose you're doing, actually stir them together and focus on the intention while you're stirring them, and then add them into your bag, and then breathe life into it, cinching it closed. And for those of you that practice like cord or knot magic or have been learning fiber magic from the fabulous Opaluna, you can actually do a specific type of braid or tie into the string of the mojo bag to actually integrate some knot magic into what you're doing. I've actually even done healing spells where I've actually taken a cord and I've stored healing energy into each knot. And whenever I wasn't feeling well and I felt like I needed a little burst of healing energy, I would untie the knot to release the energy, and I would kind of use, and I would open it up in my energy field, so that little burst of healing energy would kind of give me a jolt of healing to help me get through whenever I was having like a bad spell with a cold or anything like that. Let's see. Whenever you're not feeling well, and sleep is a very good, important thing to help you rest, relax, and get through everything, you can keep healing crystals in between your mattress and box spring to kind of charge it with healing energy for when you sleep. Also, for people, like if you have a child that's suffering from nightmares and night terrors, lepidolite is actually a great stone for that. You can actually set it next to their nightstand and tell them that this will keep the bad dreams away, and it works for that. It also tends to have lithium in it, which has a nice calming effect to help with keeping people calm and relaxed. And if people are suffering from allergies, carry some moss agate with you. Moss agate is great for keeping allergies away. Also, if you add a little bit of lime juice to your water, that actually can also help with any allergies that you may be suffering from and or dealing with. If you're trying to just keep yourself in balance, kyanite is a good one because it aligns your energy centers and your chakras to keep you balanced. Also, andesite, this stone right here that has the natural cross in it, actually can represent the 4 elements in perfect balance. So it's a way of helping to balance the elemental energy in your spiritual and magical body. So other types of healing spells that I've done. I've actually even used, you can use color, like we were talking about earlier, for certain types of healing, but you also want to be careful of certain colors that you're using. Like if you're working with somebody who has depression, you don't want to surround them in blue energy, especially around their head, because it will make them more depressed. So make sure you use like more vibrant colors, like I would say like orange, yellow, something along those lines, because we have our natural correspondences with colors and our natural reactions to it. There's reasons like if you see a lot of fast food places, they tend to use a lot of yellow in their designs because it's a high energy color and it's fast and it's moving, and it kind of encourages the whole get in, get your food, eat it, get out. So think of the colors that you're using when you're actually doing healing on somebody. Let's see. For addictions, bloodstone is good because it's a stone of courage and it helps you to break old harmful habits. Amethyst is also good too. It's considered a stone of sobriety. So if you know somebody who's having issues with like alcoholism or anything like that, this is a good stone for them to carry because it helps to encourage the not drinking and to encourage them to stick with their sobriety. I've even used things like ice for healing spells, like for getting rid of rage and anger. Anger can actually be very useful, you know, because it is high energy and whatnot. So you can actually use that to fuel things in a positive way. But if you're trying to get the anger out of you, I've literally done a spell where I took ice cubes and I took them outside and I held the cube in my hand, channeling the energy of the anger into the ice, and then I would throw it up against a building, and I had the gratification of breaking something and it shattering, but it was just ice. It was melting into water and would melt into the ground. And I tend to nurture the earth, and it was getting it back in there to go and heal the earth. Let's see. Hydrating. So for emotional healing, you can't beat rose quartz. Now, I know most people think of rose quartz as like the love stone and drawing love, but this is really great for helping somebody connect with their self-love and releasing any emotional baggage that they may be carrying. Here again, releasing it out of the emotional level so something doesn't physically manifest in the physical level. So that's good. Also, aventurine is good because it balances the male and female polarities of a person. It also heals the heart, not only energetic wise, but physically as well. So that is a really good stone for emotional healing. And when in doubt, you can't go wrong with clear quartz. Now I'm going to hold this up to the camera as best as I can, but if you can see how this quartz has 2 points on it, this is literally called a self-healer. This is a quartz that has been broken. It started to grow its own points again. So if you find a quartz like this, these are particularly effective in healing spells and healing magic because quartz amplifies energy. It's a very programmable stone. And since a lot of books don't tell you how to program a quartz, all you really need to do is hold it in your hand, focus on your intention, and when you feel like you have impregnated enough of an impression into that stone, take it and give it a light tap on a counter, and it gives it that shock, and it will hold that programming. That way, when you put energy into it, like if I programmed this for healing, when I put energy into it, healing energy is what's going to come out of it. If I want to reprogram this for something else, I simply just drop it into a container of water, of salted water overnight to cleanse it, take it out, and then I have it completely cleared and ready to reprogram again. When it comes to healing modalities, I know a lot of people are familiar with Reiki and people have studied Reiki. I had mentioned earlier that I am a Reiki master. So Reiki is actually a modality that was said to be rediscovered by a man named Dr. Usui back in around the 1920s, 1940s, and it stems from Japan. And it literally, the practitioners go through a series of attunements where you get attuned through the energy, and you actually go through levels in Reiki, much like people go through degrees in a coven. And in level 1, you're learning on how to do self-Reiki and on people directly in front of you. Level 2 is when you learn the symbols and you learn how to do distance healing. And level 3 is when you're trained to be a master, or you could do master teacher, where you're learning to be a master as well as teach Reiki. Now, I will say this, I don't believe in mixing medicines. So if you're actually going to be doing healing work on somebody and you're doing witchcraft or magic, stick with witchcraft and magic. If you're doing Reiki, do Reiki. The two don't combine well because in Reiki, everything is done counterclockwise. I was actually in Circle when I was with the Gardnerians, and I went to first degree in the Gardnerian tradition, and I was in Circle one time, and my high priestess actually wanted me to do Reiki on her in Circle, and I had to tell her that I couldn't. I had to wait till we were out of Circle because I'd have to keep moving around her counterclockwise and doing everything counterclockwise, and I would be dismissing energy that we've been building up through our whole ritual and Circle. So one of the reasons why I feel like it goes counterclockwise is because when you look at the traditional symbols of Reiki, I'm going to come back to my handy dandy little dry erase board here, get my person gone. One of the basic symbols is the Choku Rei, which is the energy gathering symbol. And let me stand over here since I'm left-handed. When you actually draw it, the circles actually go counterclockwise. So I think that's where it kind of stems from, is because when you look at the traditional symbols, and I'm going to specify traditional symbols, whenever there's circles or spirals, they tend to travel counterclockwise and not clockwise. So the other modality that I had studied is integrated energy therapy, which is also called IET. It's effectively a form of angelic healing. The idea is that the practitioner actually forms a connection with the angelic realm and forms a heart link with them, and then you hit certain integration points on the person, and you're pulling any blockages, any negativity out and releasing it to the angelic realm, pulling energy from the angelic realm, and then releasing it back into the person. So their cute little catchphrase is, it pulls the issues out of your tissues. So that and Reiki work very well together, but here again, when I'm doing healing work with one of those modalities, I stick with those. I don't completely integrate that in solely with magic.